So I'm still continuing my analysis of The Handmaid's Tale. I'm in season 1, episode 3. And this episode is entitled Late. And this episode is so pivotal because we watch June's perspective as it transitions from her former life to her life in Gilead. And before we talk about this episode, this scene right here with June and Rita, we need to talk about how they got there and do a flashback to June's former life. How did we get to Gilead? So in the opening montage, June was speaking. You heard her voice. She's like, now I'm awake to the world. I was asleep before. That's how we let it happen. Basically, this is how we let Gilead happen. When they slaughtered Congress, when they blamed it on terrorists, when they suspended the Constitution. Nothing happens overnight. That's basically what she's saying. None of this happened overnight. It was a step-by-step process. They did what many of us have seen happen with 9/11, with how these wars are happening, how it slowly just takes away people's rights. And that is what happened. In suspending the Constitution, that is how the commanders, the people that created Gilead, were able to strip away women's rights. And what happened, basically, before we get to this actual scene, what we see is June and Moira go into a coffee shop. They go into this coffee shop after a run. Now, they are in typical running attire, like sports bras and tights or whatever. They go into the coffee shop and they're trying to buy the coffee, but June's debit card doesn't work. And she's like, try it again, try it again. But if you look around, you'll see that there's nothing but men in the coffee shop working, and there's a man behind the counter. When I first watched it, at first it didn't click, but this is when the men started taking over all of the positions of working. So what happened in this episode is that this is how they started to put women in the boxes that they expected women to be in. In this episode, women are fired from their jobs, their bank, their money is taken away from them and is transferred to either their spouse, their father, or their next of kin. That's a male. So this is how they start controlling women. You control women by two ways. You control their money and you control their reproductive system, and you put the consequences in. You write that into the rule book as well. So what we see right here is what happened because, obviously women are mad about what's going on. Women have been fired from their jobs. They're angry. They're confused. And there are also some men who are angry as well. They join a protest. They go to a protest. The Guardians have been infiltrating their lives. They were a presence, but until they got to the point of the protest, when they started trying to mow down the protesters, they were just kind of an insidious and overwhelming feature. Now they have become a real threat. This scene right here is when all of the women are being walked out of their jobs. This scene here is also where this Guardian whispers or says under his eye. And June understands that they are now under surveillance. Now coming back to this scene. So remember in episode 2, we saw June zoned out during the ceremony with Commander Waterford. And so now June she's late on her period. She hasn't asked for any pads or anything. So Rita thinks that she might be pregnant. So she starts bringing her food. She brings a rose. She brings some flowers to make it pleasant. And also Serena Joy, Mrs. Waterford, also thinks that June is pregnant. She is actually being pleasant to her when at first she was just simply cold. In this episode as well, right after this scene, Mrs. Waterford asked June, would you like to take a trip? Do you want to go see the new baby? And she's like, it seems like Miss Waterford is trying to connect. Like maybe if she is pleasant, I don't know. It's what needs to happen to create a bond with her handmaid. In this episode, we also see what happens with Janine, the handmaid that had the baby. Janine is wilding out. She had this baby. She's thinking of this baby as her baby. She gives it a different name. Then she calls the baby Charlotte, where the wife calls the baby Angela. So she is having all of these crazy thoughts. It's probably postpartum depression. You know, you carry this baby for 9 months and then someone snatches it away. Your hormones are all over the place, especially since the handmaids have to also breastfeed. So imagine you cannot just turn off the motherly instinct that grew. So she is having all these, she's speaking crazy, like she's not understanding her place is just an incubator, is not to actually have feelings. And she also says something wild. She says that her commander loves her. This could really be dangerous because the commander is simply supposed to be doing his duty when he's doing the ceremony. They're not supposed to have feelings for the handmaids. They are married to their wives. Remember also, under his eye is very important. Under his eye means that everything that everyone in Gilead is doing is being overseen by a nefarious force or whoever's in charge. And so you are reminded of that. Nick, the driver, he's like, you cannot, like, he's driving June around in one of the scenes and he tells her, you cannot change anything about this country. You might as well stop being headstrong, is basically what he's saying. Just give in. He says, there's no use in being brave. Everybody breaks. Everybody. And then they go into a scene where Aunt Lydia and this man comes in and they start questioning June. And they're questioning June and like they actually tase her. And this is the point where they're trying to break her. Now, why is that? It's because these two, they are actually what they are calling gender traitors. They are lesbians. This one in this greenish color was a Martha, and the one in the red was a handmaid. And they were sentenced and they were convicted of being gender traitors. Remember, this is now a theocracy. Gilead is now basically a theocracy. Women are controlled by the Bible, and gender treachery, it was what they violated, and they were in violation of Romans 1 and 26. And what this scene is right here was heart-wrenching. So they were both convicted. They have to face the consequences. Of Glenn, the handmaid, is still able to still technically bear children. The Martha is not. So we see them in this van. They take the Martha away and they strap her neck up and they hang her in front of her lover. Of Glenn has to watch this. That is how Gilead is. And then we see Of Glenn wake up in this medical facility. She wakes up, she's in pain. She doesn't know what's going on. She was apparently under anesthesia. What we learn when Aunt Lydia comes in, they perform a procedure where they basically take away her ability to feel anything anymore. She said, you will still be able to have babies, but you won't need it anymore. You don't need to feel anything anymore. You just need to be able to do your duty, and your duty is to have babies. We get to the end of the episode. We find out that June is not pregnant. Mrs. Waterford is peeved. She is actually really upset that she actually extended her some compassion and grace, and she snatches it all back. And then she puts her in a room. She's like, you do not come out. It just goes to show how quickly these people are put back into their roles. She is an incubator, and that's it, your role. And you also, in this one, remember, this episode just goes to show how Gilead was formed and how it stays this way with consequences. This episode is very powerful, and it shows how we are going there as a country right now and keeping women in our places by being anti-feminist and by simply attempting to control women's reproductive system. That's the reason why we need to keep on talking about this and this series and this country. Jump in the comments and let me know what you think. Like,